There was a time when Australia Post could rely on its old motto, the mail must get through, to drum up business, but now the competition from electronic services such as telex and facsimile systems is turning the mail service into a more aggressive marketer. This is the first time Australia Post has taken its direct mailing message outside Sydney, and about 150 Newcastle business people and government department officials accepted the invitation to learn more. Direct mailing is where an advertiser targets a specific group in the community for age, income or social status, then sends out personally addressed mail as part of the sales pitch. According to Australia Post sales manager Steve Dilley, the system works very well.
In the US in 1986-87, there was more goods and services sold through direct marketing than there was through retail. So you can see that direct marketing has quite an impact in the marketplace.
Direct mailing isn't quite the same thing as junk mail, which is hand-delivered at random with a lower chance of success. Nevertheless, not everybody likes the idea of a marketer getting their home address and name in order to sell a product. Steve Dilley says these people are a minority and they do have the option of remaining off mailing lists.
There is the ability for individuals to ask the ADMA Association, which is Australian Direct Marketing Association, to list their name so that direct marketers won't use their name. That is, those people that are associated with ADMA. But generally find very few people object to getting addressed mail.
The 90 works, selected by Holmes Court's private curator, Roderick Anderson, provide an outline of the development of Western Australian art from 1827 to 1958. Traditional landscapes, such as James Linton's End of the Day Swan River, dominate the earlier works in the exhibition. This style remained predominant in Western Australia until the 1930s, with the obvious exception of Kathleen O'Connor, whose years spent living in Paris before the turn of the century are reflected in the strong impressionist element in her work. The first hint of modernism in the exhibition is in the 1930s work of Elise Blumen, a refugee who brought this style with her from Europe. Her work also influenced that of later artists, including Guy Gray Smith. Currently sharing the space in the gallery are artworks of a decidedly different nature. The pots of artist Mutsuo Yanagihara are a part of the contemporary Japanese ceramics exhibition being run concurrently with the Holmes Court paintings. Yanagihara's pots are fired numerous times at low temperatures to obtain the carefully controlled glazing techniques. The work of several other noted Japanese artists are also represented in the display, including the highly figurative creations of Shoji, who mixes pottery with gold and silver leaf to obtain a unique effect. The exhibition runs until December the 6th.
At 15, Tony is one of the youngest athletes ever to be accepted by the Institute of Sports Diving Unit in Brisbane. His talent for the sport stems from 5 years of gymnastics. He gave that away 3 years ago to take up diving and within 6 months was an Australian champion. In July, the Waratah High student was a member of the Australian team to the World Age Group Championships in Norway. Although not winning a medal, he did show the potential of a future champion. In Brisbane, the heated indoor facilities will be luxurious compared to the Lambton Pool, which closes down for half the year.
In Brisbane, there's a bubble which breaks up the water, so if you misjudge your dive, it doesn't hurt as much if you hit flat on the water.
And during winter, when the pool's closed here, what have you had to do to train?
We go down to Sydney Granville Pool every second weekend.
Tony begins at the Institute on the 1st of December. Lambton coach Jack Paul expects he will go on to be one of the world's best.
Tony, 15 years of age now, is showing that he has got the ability to go to Commonwealth and possibly Olympic Games in the near future.
And win a gold medal at those?
And win gold. I'll be very, very disappointed if you don't win gold.
he's only going to be 1 lap away from this Winfield feature. 1 lap away from victory is Alan Bates.
Bates went to an early lead in the race, although he did have it taken from him on several occasions. He hung on to win despite strong opposition from Trevor Shield, Bob Tunks and Max Dumsney. The super sedan main feature was held up several times by some bad crashes.
Oh dear, there's trouble up front, and there goes a real pile-up. They're on their way.
It was finally won by Pontiac driver Ken Easter, who had earlier broken the 8-lap record. Peter Garrett in a Camaro was second, with Rod Letham in third place.
Let's have a look back in the pack.
Eight weeks ago, the state government announced changes to its low-interest housing loan scheme, affecting hundreds of residents in the Maitland area. Originally, participants were given loans at 5, 6 or 7%, which would increase by 0.5% for 10 years, and then by 1% annually until it came within 1% of the Commonwealth lending rate. Overnight, however, the government raised all the loans to a flat 13.5%, a move which angered the participants. During the 8 weeks, the residents organised public meetings and lobbied politicians, and from today they are claiming victory. The government has announced the loans will return to their original rates, and any extra interest paid in the 8 weeks will be refunded. Last night, the participants held a final jubilant meeting at Maitland Town Hall. John Lawton, Group spokesman, says they now have everything they've asked for.
Well, we've got written assurances from 3 different parties, from the Democrats, the Liberal Party and also the ALP now. And that's what we've been waiting on. We've been waiting on assurances from the ALP.
Mr Lawton also had a warning for any government which tries to change the scheme in the future.
It will make very, very bad publicity for anyone that does try to bring the system in the near future or any time in the future.
Henrik Eckhart and Hans Rieber, both 23, put out a call for assistance after their vessel capsized 3 times. The mainsail was torn, and the two now plan to have their yacht repaired in Sydney and spend the next 5 months working in Australia. They have their sights set on a farming job in Brisbane, but in the meantime are simply happy to be alive.
Very happy, very happy. I wasn't very happy out there. It's first time when you try everything and you see nothing is going to you can't do anything more, and you can't just phone for a helicopter to come out and get you in.
Henrik and Hans left Denmark in August 1985. The student and the sailmaker have taken 3 years off to sail around the world in their jointly owned $40,000 10-metre yacht. The journey has been anything but easy.
We tried a storm in the Bay of Biscay in the North France, but it wasn't nothing like this. Here we were close to the coast. That's the worst thing a sailor he can be in such a situation.
If you've ever wondered what the fastest man in Australia does on his days off, here's the answer. There aren't too many roads that can handle Ross McGlashan's 500 km/h jet car, but he's found new ways to get his kicks. See how Roscoe demolishes cars in tonight's news.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
The big clean-up was in full swing throughout the Hunter today, following our devastating storms. We'll bring you that story in detail tonight.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Education and awareness is our only weapon, so claims the Hunter Regional AIDS Resources and Planning Committee. It's holding an AIDS seminar at the Royal Newcastle Hospital's David Madison building. The seminar focuses on several issues, including the various organisations which deal with AIDS, testing confidentiality and infection control. Ways to control infection are outlined in a new video launched today titled AIDS in the Workplace. During the two-day seminar, the video is on display as part of a trade exhibition featuring everything from diagnosis equipment to condoms. The use of condoms in jails is a long-standing issue.
The government has accepted that condoms be distributed in jails, and there's still some argument about who should actually distribute those condoms, but the sooner they're distributed, the better. We're increasing the methadone programs in the jails to get people away from using intravenous heroin and thereby transmitting the disease, and doing everything we can to reduce the amount of intravenous drug use in jails.
Dr Adams says AIDS is proving expensive.
We're spending this year in New South Wales $19 million on AIDS. That's direct money, but there's obviously a lot of hidden money that's going into it as well in terms of general hospital services and blood bank services and so on. So it's important to put more money into education. The information that's been presented already this morning about the knowledge of people, while they know how the virus is spread, they're not changing their behaviour. This is some interesting work the medical students here in Newcastle have done. The behaviour isn't changing as dramatically as we would like. We've got to get the message across that everybody is liable to get this disease if they're not careful.
Good afternoon, I'm Belinda Borissow. About 1,000 Australians die each year from skin cancer. During National Skin Cancer Awareness Week, parents and teachers are being encouraged to do more to stop children developing the deadly disease. We'll bring you a report on that tonight. For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Since the stock market crash 4 weeks ago, all eyes have been on the share market. Today's Bureau of Statistics released the most recent trade figures. Once again, the state of the economy was back to the forefront. So it was particularly timely for Dr Don Stammer, the chief economist of one of Australia's most prominent stockbroking firms, Bain & Company, to slip into town. He is not pushing a tale of gloom and doom and says although we've been through a rough period, he does not think we're heading for a rerun of the Great Depression.
A number of people worry that with the share market crash of 4 weeks ago, the world is going through a replay of 1929. And of course the 1929 share market crash was followed by the Great Depression. But what is totally different this time is the extent to which central banks around the world are taking action to provide confidence to financial markets, to look after the banking systems, and to ensure, particularly in America, that we don't have the large number of bank failures that occurred in the early 1930s. So in my view, what happened a month ago was a very significant change in emotion in financial markets. Share markets have now overreacted to that change in emotion, but with the easing of monetary policy around the world, we are definitely not looking at a replay of 1929.
Dr Stammer is not sure whether the stock market is at the bottom. He says a lot will depend on what happens to the Japanese stock market. He believes most superannuation funds will be quite safe because of diversified investments. Dr Stammer also claims that Newcastle had been heading for a real estate boom, but says this will now be put on ice in the short term.
Day 2 of the Coke Surf trials resulted in a few shock surprises for both competitors and spectators in round 3 of the qualifying event. With conditions much the same as yesterday, the waves were only 1 to 1.2 metres and forced the 24 competitors against the top 8 seeds to produce some point-scoring manoeuvres. The biggest disappointment for the local crowd was the elimination of Luke Egan, Damien Iredale and Dave MacArthur, and on the international side, the surprising knockout of Hawaii's John Shamuka and America's Todd Holland. All of the 8 seeds, including Rob Page and Terry Richardson, will now move on to the quarter-finals, and 17-year-old Nicky Wood will be right beside them. Going into the 6th heat and knowing all hopes rested on his performance, the young pro showed his style, defeating Sydney seed Richard Marsh in a close heat. Top seed Pierre Tosté, who was knocked down during last year's competition by a bolt of lightning, also took out his heat, believing this year's surf to be a little difficult.
The surf compared to last year is a little down on the downside, but it is expected to pick up, so we should see some good surfing by the weekend.
What about you? Are you looking in the sky for any lightning bolts this year?
I'm keeping clear of all clouds and going to keep inside if it storms again.
Meanwhile, local girls Michelle Donoghue, Melissa Ladd and Connie Nixon made it through the first round of the WDC Women's Classic, advancing to the main event late this afternoon against the top women competitors. Favourites Wendy Botha, California's Georgia Smith and defending Surfest champ Frida Zamba, as well as Jodie Cooper, will battle it out against each other in Friday's quarter-finals. In a close heat, 18-year-old Michelle Donoghue was the only triallist to eliminate a seeded surfer, California's Elisa Schwartzstein. But the pressure has only just begun now that she must meet 3-time world champion Frida Zamba.
Well, I've beaten her once before and it'd be really good to beat her again. I'll just try my hardest.
You confident of getting into the semis?
I'm as confident as you can be.
Conditions improved slightly today, though the waves at Newcastle Beach kept well below the standard 1.2 metres that have tested surfers all week. Round 1 of the main event, the BHP Steel International, matched the 16 survivors from the Coke Surf trials with the lower seeds rated in the world's top 30. Today's biggest disappointment for the local crowd was the withdrawal of 2 veteran surfers. Mark Richards, 4-time world champion, was forced out of the event with a niggling back injury, and Wayne Rabbit Bartholomew, also a former world champ, withdrew nursing a leg injury.
Well, it is disappointing. I've been out of the water for a week. I was up in Queensland last week for the Stubbies Masters contest and I hurt my back up there. And I've been having treatment like every day since then, but unfortunately it hasn't come right. I had a surf this morning at Dixon Park just to see how it felt. And I couldn't surf hardly at all. So
The surprise eliminations included current junior world amateur champion Tahiti's Vatia David, South Africa's Pierre Tosté and local Simon Law, who went down to Manly's Merrick Davis by just 1/10 of a point. Going into the 6th heat as Newcastle's hope, the pressure was on Nicky Wood. But the 17-year-old easily defeated USA's Dave Parmenter and will now meet current world champion Tom Curran in tomorrow's round 2. It's going to be one heat Nicky's godfather won't miss.
Well, that'll be a great heat. Actually, Nicky's knocked off Tom Curran 2 times before. He did it this year at Bells, like in the first round, and went on to win the main event. And he also knocked off Tom Curran last year in the Stubbies contest. So I think it could be a real clash. I think that could be the highlight.
Tomorrow's competition is expected to be fierce for the 16 through to the 2nd round. Hawaii's Sonny Garcia will meet Tom Carroll, Sydney's Richard Marsh is up against current leader in the world ratings Damien Hardman, and Manly's Merrick Davis will challenge defending Surfest champ Mark Occhilupo. Meanwhile, the quarterfinals began in the WDC Women's Classic between the top 7 seeds and local Michelle Donoghue. Riding against current Women's World Champion Frida Zamba, the young 18-year-old was just pipped by 0.6 of a point, despite winning 2 previous battles against the American pro. Wendy Botha, Frida Zamba, Jodie Cooper and Pam Burridge will now move into the semi-finals this Sunday.
"68 club champions from throughout the state took part in today's tournament. Held over 36 holes, the scratch event has been dominated by hunter golfers. In the first round, Brian Berry of Belmont blazed his way to the lead with a 70, followed by Whitlock, 1 stroke behind on 71. On 74 was Waratah's Ray Carlin and Sydney's Stuart Warren. However, the winds got stronger, affecting most of the golfers, with early leader Berry firing a second round 81 to drop out of contention. With some golfers still on the course, Robert Whitlock's 2-round total of 146 looks set to win the prestigious title.
Recovering from their South Australian defeat, the Queensland Sheffield Shield cricket team arrived in Newcastle today to begin warm-up sessions. The side will meet New South Wales at the #1 sports ground this Friday.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.